Performing for others for decades can turn a life of achievement into a gilded prison. When every milestone is reached and every rule is followed exactly as demanded, the supposed finish line often reveals a reality where you are no longer the author of your own story. To understand exactly how a person becomes trapped in this existence, we have to look at the environment around them. Here in Seoul, the hyper-modern capital of South Korea, a booming economy and a glittering skyline sit atop deeply entrenched, unspoken rules. Success here is highly prescribed, dictating where you work, who you marry, and exactly how you are expected to behave based on your age and your gender. This brings us to Yoon Jina, a 35-year-old corporate supervisor. On paper, she is a complete triumph of this system, possessing a respectable title, a decent salary, and the quiet obedience that is expected of a woman in her position. Yet beneath that polished surface, there is a massive internal vacuum. She is exhausted, unfulfilled, and entirely invisible to the people who claim to care about her. Her domestic life is a constant, suffocating pressure cooker. Her mother views marriage purely as a social and financial transaction to elevate the family's status. The pressure to marry into wealth is so intense that Jina is expected to tolerate a blatantly cheating, disrespectful ex-boyfriend simply because he comes from a prestigious background. To her family, her personal happiness remains secondary to the strength of her marital resume. The trap extends perfectly into her professional life. Inside these downtown offices, Jina navigates a toxic corporate environment. She is routinely diminished, forced to endure inappropriate comments, and expected to organize company dinners where she acts as little more than a servant for predatory male superiors. The system demands her compliance and punishes any sign of resistance. This is the core dilemma. Finding a unique voice is nearly impossible when an entire cultural ecosystem is designed to keep you small and compliant. Breaking out of such a cycle requires a significant shock to the system. Enter Se-yeon-hee. He is a talented art director in his late 20s, and perhaps most importantly, he is the younger brother of Jina's lifelong best friend. This hierarchy maps out traditional South Korean social standing, where age and gender dictate a strict flow of authority. The Noona dynamic, a romance between an older woman and a younger man, creates a stark disruption to this standard patriarchal flow. Because they are practically chosen family, their relationship crosses a massive societal taboo that threatens the established order. However, the way Jeon-hee interacts with Jina inverts the expectation of submission. While the rest of society treats a 35-year-old unmarried onan as an expired commodity, he offers her profound, unwavering respect. He sees her as a person of value, rather than a checklist of social obligations. Because of the cultural weight pressing down on them, the early stages of their romance happen entirely in the shadows. They hide in stairwells, sneak around quiet side streets, and carefully mask their connection. The secrecy is a survival mechanism to shield them from the certain judgment of their families. Experiencing Joon-hee's unconditional regard allows Jina to finally recognize her own humanity. This shift in how she is perceived by another person creates the internal permission she needs to finally stand up for herself. Being truly seen by him helps her realize that she is worth defending. Secrets of this magnitude cannot survive indefinitely in such tight social circles. The inevitable explosion of the truth brings down an immediate and severe backlash. Her mother views the younger, less wealthy Joon-hee as an absolute disaster for the family's reputation, leading to a brutal confrontation. Historically, Jina would have folded under this level of pressure. She would have lowered her head and accepted the punishment to keep the peace. But the internal shift has already happened. Instead of absorbing the abuse, she stands her ground and rejects her mother's matchmaking agenda with a force she has never shown before. This newfound rebellion rapidly spills over into her career. Jina stops pouring the drinks at company dinners and begins formally documenting the harassment she and her female colleagues face. She systematically confronts the toxic executives who have controlled her workplace for years, refusing to play the part of the submissive supervisor any longer. This fictional workplace rebellion mirrored a real-world cultural reckoning. At the time the story was unfolding on screen, South Korea was experiencing a wave of public protests against institutional sexism. The Me Too movement was forcing a harsh spotlight onto the deeply ingrained abuses of power in corporate environments across the country. The romance in this narrative functions as the catalyst for Gina to dismantle her oppressive reality. Her love for Junhee is the starting point, but her love for herself becomes the force she uses to tear down the structures that kept her small. The series refutes the idea that love instantly fixes every systemic issue or heals every family rift. It avoids the traditional formula that offers a clean, magical fairy tale resolution where problems vanish simply because two people have found each other. Fighting entrenched societal norms takes a brutal, exhausting toll. The constant friction of defending their relationship against relentless familial and social pressure wears the couple down. This exhaustion eventually leads them to a painful, realistic separation, showing the heavy cost of challenging the status quo. But the transformation inside Gina cannot be reversed. She executes her final act of independence by recognizing that the environment of Seoul will never let her thrive. She leaves the city behind, moving to the quiet coasts of Jeju Island to rebuild her life entirely on her own terms, away from the expectations of her past. When she and Junhee eventually reunite in this new environment, they no longer operate under the old, unequal dynamics. Because she fought to build her own autonomy and live for herself first, they can finally stand together as absolute equals. Ultimately, the narrative suggests that the most impactful romances are those that empower us to seize our own independence. This connection provided the courage required to walk away from a suffocating reality and build something new. If you want to explore the psychology behind your favorite stories, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives.